Hello there. Welcome back to Dreamland Science. Tonight, you do not need to remember any of this. You do not need to stay awake. If your eyes are already heavy, that is perfectly fine. In fact, that is exactly what your body has been preparing for. Because here is something rather remarkable. Your body started building tonight's sleep the moment you woke up this morning. A quiet molecule called adenosine has been accumulating inside your brain with every hour you have been awake. And somewhere deep behind your eyes, a clock no bigger than a grain of rice has been keeping time, counting the hours since dawn. Tonight, we are going to explore 100 gentle facts about these two ancient rhythms. The invisible pressure that builds with your waking hours, and the clock that has been ticking inside you since before you were born. Two rivers flowing quietly through your body, converging right here, right now, to carry you toward rest. So settle in. Let the weight of the day begin to lift. Let your shoulders drop, if they would like to. Let your jaw soften. And if you drift off before we reach the end, that is not failure. That is the whole point. And if you enjoy this kind of quiet company, perhaps consider subscribing. It helps others find their way here too. One sleepy soul at a time. Now, let us begin. Perhaps you have had nights where sleep felt impossibly far away, where the harder you tried, the further it seemed to drift, where you lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if sleep had somehow forgotten about you. It had not. It never does. Because deep inside your brain, something has been building all day long, a quiet, patient pressure. And tonight, it is here. Your body started preparing tonight's sleep the moment you woke up this morning. From the very first second your eyes opened, a process began. Not a dramatic one, not one you could feel or notice, but a steady, quiet accumulation. Like sand trickling through an hourglass that resets every time you wake. Scientists call it sleep homeostasis. Your body keeps track of how long you have been awake, and the longer you stay awake, the stronger the drive to sleep becomes. It is not something you control. It is not something you choose. It is something your body does for you. Automatically, faithfully, without fail. Perhaps you might notice your breath slowing, just a little, as you settle into this thought. Your body has been counting the hours. And tonight, the count is almost complete. There is a molecule called adenosine that builds up in your brain with every hour you are awake. Adenosine is a small, unassuming molecule. It does not demand attention. It does not shout. It simply accumulates with every thought you think, every problem you solve, every conversation you have. Adenosine quietly increases in your brain. It is produced as a natural byproduct of cellular energy use. When your neurons fire, they consume a molecule called ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and as ATP is broken down, adenosine is left behind, like the soft ash after a candle has burned. Researchers at Harvard, led by Robert McCarley, were among the first to map how adenosine accumulates in the basal forebrain throughout the day. They found that the longer a subject stayed awake, the higher the adenosine levels climbed, and the sleepier the subject became. Imagine a quiet snowfall on a rooftop. Each flake is almost nothing, But hour by hour, the snow deepens. That is adenosine. And right now, the snow is deep. Adenosine is not a flaw in your system. It is a gift. It might be tempting to think of sleepiness as a problem, as something getting in the way. But adenosine is not an obstacle. It is a messenger. It is your body's gentle way of saying you have done enough for today. In a world that often asks you to do more, to stay alert, to keep pushing. Adenosine is the quiet voice that says rest is not weakness. Rest is what you were built for. A study published in the journal Sleep in 2003 found that adenosine does not simply make you tired, it actively promotes the transition into slow-wave sleep, the deepest, most restorative kind. In other words, adenosine is not just inviting you to sleep, it is inviting you to the best kind of sleep. Perhaps you might notice your eyelids feeling just a little heavier. That is not a problem. That is a gift. Arriving on time. After about 16 hours of being awake, adenosine levels reach a gentle peak. 16 hours. That is roughly how long it takes for the pressure to build to its fullest. If you woke at 7 in the morning, by 11 at night, the adenosine in your brain has reached a soft, insistent crescendo. Matthew Walker, the neuroscientist and author of Why We Sleep, describes this as the sleep pressure curve. It rises steadily throughout the day, like a wave building far out at sea, and when it reaches its peak, it wants to break. It wants to carry you into sleep. You do not need to force this. You do not need to make it happen. The wave is already here. All you need to do is let it carry you. Imagine standing at the edge of a warm, still lake. The water is not rushing toward you. It is simply there, waiting, patient, and all you need to do is step in. Caffeine does not remove tiredness. It only hides it for a while. Caffeine is one of the most widely consumed psychoactive substances on Earth. Billions of people drink it every day. And yet, most people do not know what it actually does inside the brain. Caffeine does not give you energy. It does not reduce your adenosine levels. What it does is block the receptors that adenosine binds to. It is like putting earplugs in while someone is speaking. The voice is still there. The words are still being said. You just cannot hear them. A study at Johns Hopkins University found that caffeine's half-life in the body is about 5 to 6 hours. That means if you drink a cup of coffee at 2 in the afternoon, half of that caffeine is still circulating in your brain at 8 in the evening. But the adenosine is still building behind the block. And when the caffeine finally clears, all of that accumulated pressure rushes in at once. Some people call it a caffeine crash, but it is not a crash. It is simply the truth. Arriving a little late. Perhaps you might notice your hands resting a little more heavily wherever they are. The truth is here now, and it is gentle. When caffeine wears off, all the hidden adenosine is still there, waiting patiently. This is one of the most poetic things about your biology. Adenosine does not give up. It does not go away because something is blocking it. It simply waits. While caffeine occupies the receptors, adenosine continues to be produced. It continues to accumulate. And when the caffeine molecules eventually detach and are metabolized by your liver, the adenosine floods in, binding to every receptor it can find, delivering hours of accumulated sleepiness in a single wave. It is patient in a way that few things in nature are, like a river that has been dammed. The water does not stop flowing. It simply gathers, and gathers, and gathers, until the dam is released. And tonight, there is no dam. There is nothing between you and the sleep that has been building. It is free to reach you now. Your brain has special receptors shaped perfectly to receive adenosine's quiet message. They are called Adenosine receptors, and they are found throughout your brain, particularly in areas associated with wakefulness and arousal: the basal forebrain, the cortex, the thalamus. When adenosine binds to these receptors, it does something beautifully simple. It reduces the activity of wake-promoting neurons. It does not force them to stop. It simply turns down the dial, like dimming the lights in a room, one notch at a time. There is also a second type, A2A receptors, found in the striatum. These are involved in the reward pathways of the brain. When adenosine binds here, it reduces the drive to seek stimulation. The world becomes a little less interesting. And that is not a loss. That is permission. Perhaps you might notice that the outside world feels a little further away right now, a little less urgent. That is your receptors, doing their quiet work. The longer you are awake, the more your brain whispers, "It is time." This whisper is not sudden. It does not arrive all at once. It builds, gradually, like the fading of daylight, so slowly that you might not notice the exact moment it begins. But it is always there, growing. Neuroscientists at the University of Zurich have tracked this process using EEG recordings, electroencephalography, measuring the electrical activity of the brain throughout the day. They found that as adenosine increases, the brain's electrical patterns begin to shift. The fast, sharp waves of alertness give way to slower, rounder waves. It is like the difference between a stream rushing over rocks and a river widening into a delta. The water is still moving, but it has become slower, broader, calmer. And that is what is happening inside you right now. The stream is widening, the current, and the delta is just ahead. Adenosine does not just make you sleepy. It also slows your neurons, like turning down the volume on a busy room. When adenosine levels are low, in the morning, after a full night of sleep, your neurons fire rapidly and efficiently. Information moves quickly. Thoughts are sharp. Decisions come easily. But as adenosine builds throughout the day, it begins to slow neural transmission. The gaps between signals widen. The firing rate decreases. Thoughts become softer, looser, less insistent. This is not a malfunction. It is a feature. Your brain is deliberately reducing its own processing speed, preparing the neural architecture for sleep. It is like an orchestra gradually lowering its volume at the end of a symphony, not stopping, just fading into something quieter. Researchers at the University of Freiburg found that adenosine specifically targets glutamatergic neurons, the excitatory neurons that keep you alert, while sparing the inhibitory ones. In other words, adenosine selectively quiets the loudest voices in your brain, while letting the calming ones continue. Perhaps you might notice your thoughts becoming a little softer, a little less sharp-edged. That is perfectly fine. That is the volume turning down. Sleep is the only thing that clears adenosine completely. like rain washing a dusty road. Nothing else can do what sleep does. Not rest, not meditation, not lying still with your eyes closed. Only true sleep, particularly deep, slow-wave sleep, triggers the enzymatic processes that break down and clear adenosine from your brain. During deep sleep, an enzyme called ecto-5' nucleotidase becomes active, converting adenosine into inosine and then into other metabolites that your body can recycle or dispose of. It is a thorough, gentle housekeeping. Matthew Walker describes it as wiping the slate clean. When you wake after a full night of sleep, your adenosine levels are at their lowest. The road is washed, the snow has melted, and the cycle begins again. Imagine a garden after a long, quiet rain. The dust is gone. The leaves are glistening. Everything is fresh and still. That is what your brain looks like after deep sleep. And tonight, the rain is coming. Even a short nap reduces adenosine, which is why you feel refreshed afterward. A nap of just 20 to 30 minutes can measurably lower adenosine levels in the brain. Not as much as a full night of sleep, of course, but enough to take the edge off. Enough to clear some of the accumulated pressure. Researchers at the University of Düsseldorf found that even a 6-minute nap improved memory performance, suggesting that the brain begins its restorative work almost immediately upon falling asleep. But here is the beautiful thing about tonight. You are not limited to 6 minutes or 20 minutes. You have the whole night ahead of you. Hours and hours in which your brain can do its deepest, most thorough work. There is no rush. There is no timer. Just the long, unhurried night. And all the time you need. Every living creature with a nervous system experiences some form of sleep pressure. This is not unique to humans. It is not unique to mammals. Every animal that has ever been studied, from elephants to earthworms, from eagles to jellyfish, shows some form of rest activity cycle that resembles sleep. Sleep is not a luxury that evolution invented for the comfortable. It is a fundamental requirement of having a nervous system. If you have neurons, you need to rest them. A study published in Science in 2019 found that even the tiny roundworm C. elegans, an organism with just 302 neurons, shows a sleep-like state driven by a molecule remarkably similar to adenosine. You are part of something ancient, something shared by every creature that has ever thought, or felt, or dreamed. Sleep is the thread that connects all nervous systems across the tree of life. Perhaps there is comfort in that. You are not alone in needing rest. You never have been. Fruit flies, when kept awake too long, will fall asleep the moment they are allowed to rest. In the early 2000s, researchers at the University of Wisconsin began studying sleep in Drosophila, the common fruit fly. They found that when flies were kept awake by gentle mechanical stimulation, they accumulated a sleep debt, and when the stimulation stopped, the flies fell asleep almost instantly. More remarkably, the flies showed something called sleep rebound. They slept longer and deeper than usual to make up for the lost rest. Their tiny brains, with just 100,000 neurons, obeyed the same basic rule as your brain with its 86 billion. The longer you are awake, the more you need to sleep. There is something humbling about that. A creature that weighs less than a milligram follows the same rhythm you do. The same tide pulls at both of you. And tonight, The tide is gentle. Dolphins sleep with one half of their brain at a time. Even they cannot resist the pressure. Because dolphins must come to the surface to breathe. They cannot afford to lose consciousness entirely. So they evolved a remarkable solution: unihemispheric slow-wave sleep. One hemisphere sleeps while the other stays awake. Then they switch. But here is the key detail. Dolphins still sleep. They still accumulate sleep pressure. They still need to clear adenosine. Evolution found a way to let them breathe and sleep at the same time. But it never found a way to let them skip sleep entirely. No creature has. Not dolphins. Not migrating birds. Not even the bullfrogs that some researchers once claimed never slept. Later studies showed they do, just in very short bursts. Sleep pressure is universal. It is inescapable, and that is not a burden. It is a promise. The promise that no matter how long your day has been, rest will always come. Perhaps you might notice your body settling a little deeper, your shoulders releasing just a fraction more. That is the promise. Keeping itself. Adenosine was first connected to sleep in 1929. Nearly a century ago, scientists began to suspect that something was accumulating in the brain during wakefulness, something that created the drive to sleep. Early researchers called it hypnotoxin, a sleep toxin. The idea was simple, but elegant. The longer you are awake, the more of this substance builds up, and when you sleep, it is cleared away. It took decades of research to identify adenosine as one of the key molecules involved. In 1997, Taija Porkka-Heiskanen and her team at Harvard published a landmark paper showing that adenosine levels in the basal forebrain of cats rose steadily during wakefulness and fell during sleep. It was one of the first direct measurements of sleep pressure at the molecular level. Nearly 100 years of science. And the conclusion is simple. Your body knows how to sleep. It has always known. And tonight, it is showing you. Your brain produces adenosine as a byproduct of using energy. The harder you think, the more it builds. Every thought you have requires energy. Every memory you recall. Every word you speak. Every decision you make. All of it consumes ATP, and all of it leaves adenosine behind. This means that a day filled with mental effort, problem solving, concentrating, worrying, produces more adenosine than a day of physical rest. Your brain, which weighs only about 3 pounds, consumes roughly 20% of your body's total energy. It is the most metabolically expensive organ you have. And so, after a long day of thinking, your brain is rich with adenosine, saturated with it. Every synapse, every pathway, every circuit carries the residue of the day's mental labor. Imagine a workshop at the end of a long day. Sawdust on the floor, tools laid down. The work is done. And now, it is time to sweep clean. That sweeping. That is what sleep will do tonight. This means that a mentally exhausting day creates even more sleep pressure than a physically quiet one. It seems counterintuitive. You might expect that running a marathon would make you sleepier than sitting at a desk. But while physical exhaustion certainly contributes to fatigue, the adenosine-driven sleep pressure is primarily a product of brain activity. A study at Loughborough University found that subjects who performed cognitively demanding tasks for several hours fell asleep faster and slept more deeply than those who had been physically active but mentally idle. So if you have spent today thinking, working, planning, worrying, your sleep pressure is especially strong tonight. Your brain has been burning fuel all day, and the adenosine is deep. Perhaps you might notice your forehead softening, the muscles around your eyes releasing, just slightly. The thinking is over for today. Your brain has earned its rest. Adenosine works alongside other neurotransmitters. G, A, B, galanin, all gently encouraging rest. Adenosine is not alone in its work. It is part of a larger ensemble, a quiet orchestra of molecules that together create the conditions for sleep. GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, is the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. When GABA levels rise, neural activity decreases. The brain becomes quieter, calmer, more still. Galanin is a neuropeptide found in the ventrolateral preoptic area, one of the brain's key sleep-promoting regions. Galanin-producing neurons become active as sleep approaches, helping to shut down the brain's arousal centers. Together with adenosine, these molecules create a gentle, coordinated descent. Not a sudden drop, not a crash, just a slow, harmonious dimming, like an entire city turning off its lights, one street at a time. And you are in that city now. The streets are getting quieter, the lights are getting softer, and soon it will be still. The basal forebrain is especially sensitive to adenosine. It is one of the brain's sleep centers. The basal forebrain sits at the base of your brain, just behind and below your eyes. It contains neurons that project widely throughout the cortex, helping to maintain wakefulness and attention. But these neurons are exquisitely sensitive to adenosine. As adenosine levels rise, the basal forebrain's wake-promoting signals weaken. Its grip on consciousness loosens, and the brain begins to shift towards sleep. Researchers have found that injecting adenosine directly into the basal forebrain of rats causes them to fall asleep almost immediately. Conversely, blocking adenosine receptors in this area keeps them awake far longer than usual. Your basal forebrain is listening right now. It is receiving adenosine's message, and it is beginning, gently, to let go. Like a hand that has been holding something tightly all day. Finally, slowly, opening its fingers. When adenosine reaches a certain threshold, your brain begins to shift from beta waves to alpha waves. Beta waves are the fast, sharp electrical patterns associated with active thinking, problem solving, and alertness. They are the sound of a busy mind. Alpha waves are slower, rounder, more rhythmic. They appear when you close your eyes, when you relax, when you stop trying to focus on anything in particular. They are the sound of a mind at ease. As adenosine accumulates, it promotes this transition. The busy chatter of beta gives way to the gentle pulse of alpha. Your thoughts slow. Your awareness softens. The world becomes a little more distant, a little more dreamlike. EEG studies show that this shift often happens gradually, over minutes or even hours. You might not notice the exact moment it begins, but perhaps you can feel it now. A subtle loosening of thought, a gentle widening of attention, as if the edges of your mind are becoming softer. Alpha waves feel like that soft, floaty feeling just before sleep, when thoughts become loose and dreamy. If you have ever noticed a moment where your thoughts seem to drift on their own, where images flickered through your mind without you choosing them, that was likely alpha activity. Alpha waves oscillate at about 8 to 12 cycles per second. They are associated with relaxed wakefulness, daydreaming, and the transition zone between being awake and being asleep. Neuroscientists sometimes call this the hypnagogic borderland, the twilight zone where consciousness begins to dissolve. It is a place where logic loosens, where time feels elastic, where a thought can turn into a picture and a picture can turn into a feeling. It is one of the most peaceful states your brain can be in, and it is not something you can force or create. It is something that comes to you when you stop trying. Perhaps you are near that borderland now. Perhaps your thoughts have already begun to drift. If so, let them. There is nowhere they need to go. This transition is not something you can force. It is something that arrives. This is one of the most important things to understand about sleep. It cannot be commanded. It cannot be willed into existence. The harder you try to fall asleep, the more your brain interprets that effort as alertness, and the further sleep retreats. Sleep researchers call this the sleep effort paradox. Trying to sleep activates the very systems that keep you awake. It is like trying to catch a butterfly by running after it. The running scares it away. But if you stand still, if you let your mind quiet, if you stop chasing, the butterfly lands on your shoulder. Adenosine does not need your permission. It does not need your effort. It is already here. The transition will come on its own. It always does. So perhaps you might let go of the need to sleep and simply let yourself rest. Sleep will find you. It always has. Your body has been doing this every single evening of your life, without being asked. Think about that for a moment. Every night you have ever lived, every night since you were born, your body has performed this same quiet miracle. It has accumulated adenosine. It has shifted your brainwaves. It has lowered your temperature. It has prepared the neural landscape for sleep. You did not need to learn how to do this. You were not taught. It was not a skill you practiced. It was written into your biology from the very beginning, coded into the same ancient instructions that tell your heart to beat and your lungs to breathe. Your body knows how to sleep. It has always known, and tonight is no different from any other night. The same process that has carried you into sleep 10,000 times before is carrying you right now. There is nothing new to figure out, nothing to solve, just the same ancient rhythm, doing what it has always done, right now, as you listen. Adenosine is present in your brain, doing its quiet work. This is not a hypothetical. This is not a future event. Right now, in this moment, adenosine molecules are binding to receptors in your basal forebrain, your cortex, your thalamus. They are slowing your neural activity. They are dimming the lights of wakefulness. You cannot feel individual molecules, of course, but you can feel their collective effect. That gentle heaviness in your eyelids, that softness in your limbs, that quiet feeling of the world becoming less important. That is adenosine. It has been working all day. And now, in the stillness of this moment, it is reaching its peak. Perhaps you might notice that you do not need to hold on to anything right now. Not a thought, not a worry, not even this sentence. You can let it all go. You do not need to do anything. The tide is already here. We began this cluster with a simple idea. Your body started building tonight's sleep the moment you woke up this morning. And now, 25 facts later, that building is complete. The adenosine is here. The pressure is here. The invitation is here. You do not need to chase sleep. You do not need to earn it. You do not need to be good enough for it, or calm enough for it, or tired enough for it. It is not a reward for a productive day. It is not a prize for good behavior. It is a tide. And tides do not ask permission. They simply arrive. So let it arrive. Let the tide wash over you. Let the sand settle. Let the water be still. And if your eyes are already closed, that is perfect. That is exactly where you are meant to be. Perhaps you might notice your whole body feeling just a little heavier now, a little more settled, a little more at peace. That is the first river, flowing, and soon we will meet the second. And now we come to the second river. The first, the quiet pressure of adenosine, has been building all day. You can feel it. Perhaps that gentle heaviness, that softening at the edges. But there is another force at work tonight, one that does not depend on how long you have been awake, one that runs on a rhythm far older than your day, older than your life, older even than our species. Deep inside your brain, there is a clock, and it has been keeping time since the very beginning. Deep inside your brain, there is a clock that has been running since before you were born. It started ticking in the womb, before you ever saw daylight, before you took your first breath. A cluster of neurons, impossibly small, began to pulse in a rhythm that would govern nearly every function of your body for the rest of your life. Researchers at the University of California, Davis found that the fetal clock begins to show circadian oscillations during the second trimester. It is synchronized not by light, because there is no light in the womb, but by signals from the mother's body, her melatonin, her cortisol, her feeding patterns. All of them gently entraining the tiny clock within. So before you ever knew what a day was, your body was already keeping time. Before you ever watched a sunset, your brain was already preparing for night. Perhaps you might notice your breath settling into a rhythm of its own, slow and steady, like a clock that does not need winding. It is called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and it is smaller than a grain of rice. The suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, is one of the most remarkable structures in the human brain. It sits just above the optic chiasm, the point where your two optic nerves cross on their way from your eyes to the visual cortex. It weighs less than 1/100th of a gram. It contains roughly 20,000 neurons, a tiny fraction of the brain's 86 billion, and yet it is the master pacemaker of your entire body. Without it, your sleep-wake cycle, your hormone rhythms, your body temperature, your metabolism, all of it would drift into chaos. This was demonstrated dramatically by Martin Ralph and his team at the University of Virginia in 1990, when they showed that transplanting the SCN from one hamster to another could transfer the donor's circadian rhythm to the recipient. A grain of rice, That is all it takes to keep the orchestra of your body in time. And tonight, that grain of rice is conducting a lullaby. Perhaps you might notice how small and quiet things can hold enormous power. Like this moment, like this breath. This tiny cluster of about 20,000 neurons sits just above where your optic nerves cross. The placement is not accidental. The SCN sits directly above the optic chiasm because it needs information from your eyes. Not visual information, not shapes or colors or the details of the world. It needs something simpler, more ancient. It needs to know, is it light or is it dark? This positioning allows the SCN to receive direct neural input from the retina through a dedicated pathway called the retino-hypothalamic tract. It is a private line, a direct connection between the outside world and your internal clock. The elegance of this arrangement has fascinated neuroscientists for decades. Clifford Sapir at Harvard Medical School has described it as one of the most efficient circuits in the brain. A minimal number of neurons accomplishing a task of extraordinary significance. And right now, your optic chiasm is quiet. The signals from your eyes are fading, and your clock is receiving the message it has been waiting for all day. The light is dimming. Night is here. It receives light signals directly from your eyes, even through closed eyelids. This might surprise you. Even with your eyes closed, some light still reaches your retina. Your eyelids are not opaque. They are translucent membranes that allow a small percentage of ambient light to pass through. This is why sleeping in a bright room can disrupt your circadian rhythm, even if you never open your eyes. The SCN is remarkably sensitive. Even dim light passing through closed eyelids can be enough to send a signal. But tonight, as the darkness deepens around you, less and less light reaches your retina. The signal to your clock is clear and consistent. It is night. It is safe. It is time to rest. Researchers at Brown University found that the SCN responds most strongly to blue wavelength light, the kind produced by the daytime sky. And right now, the sky is dark, the blue light is gone, and your clock is settling into its nighttime rhythm. Perhaps you might notice your eyelids feeling soft and still. There is nothing they need to see right now, nothing they need to do. Your internal clock runs on a cycle of approximately 24 hours and 11 minutes. Not exactly 24 hours, slightly longer. This small discrepancy, just 11 minutes, reveals something fascinating about your biology. Your clock is not perfectly synchronized to the rotation of the Earth. It runs on its own time and its own pace. This was first discovered in the 1960s, when researchers at the Max Planck Institute in Germany placed volunteers in underground bunkers with no clocks, no sunlight, and no time cues of any kind. Left to their own devices, the volunteers' sleep-wake cycles drifted, settling into periods of about 24.5 to 25 hours. More precise measurements in recent decades, conducted by Charles Czeisler at Harvard, have refined this estimate to an average of 24 hours and 11 minutes. Remarkably consistent, remarkably close to a day, but not quite. This is why your clock needs resetting each morning. Without the anchor of light, it would slowly drift, your bedtime creeping later and later, like a watch that runs just a little slow. But tonight, your clock is right on time, and it is telling you this is where you belong. Without any light cues at all, your body would still cycle between sleep and wakefulness. This is perhaps the most profound thing about your circadian rhythm. It is not a reaction to the outside world. It is not caused by light or darkness. It is generated from within. Your clock is endogenous, self-sustaining, self-generating, running on its own internal machinery. Light does not create the rhythm. Light merely fine-tunes it, keeps it aligned with the planet's rotation. Remove all light. Remove all time cues. Place a person in a cave deep underground, and they will still sleep and wake, still feel alert in what their body believes is morning, still feel drowsy in what their body believes is evening. The rhythm is not learned. It is not imposed. It is woven into the fabric of your cells. Every neuron in your SCN contains the molecular machinery for a 24-hour oscillation, a transcription-translation feedback loop of clock genes that has been running, in one form or another, for billions of years. Perhaps you might notice something comforting in that. Even if the world disappeared, even if all the lights went out, your body would still know when to sleep. It is written inside you. Scientists discovered this by keeping volunteers in underground caves for weeks. One of the most famous experiments in sleep science took place in 1962, when a French geologist named Michel Siffre descended into a cave in the Alps and stayed there for 2 months, completely isolated from daylight, clocks, and any indication of time. Siffre ate when he was hungry, slept when he was tired, woke when his body told him to, and he kept meticulous records of everything. What he found changed our understanding of human biology. His body maintained a consistent sleep-wake cycle. Even in total darkness, he slept and woke at regular intervals. His temperature rose and fell in a predictable pattern. His body knew what time it was, even when his mind did not. When he finally emerged from the cave, he believed he had been underground for about 25 days. In reality, it had been 61. Time had become elastic, but his rhythm had not. His clock had kept running, faithfully, in the dark. And your clock is running now, in the quiet dark of this moment, keeping time, keeping you. Even in total darkness, their bodies kept a rhythm, slightly longer than a day. Siffre's experiment was repeated many times in the decades that followed. In Germany, in the United States, in Japan. Each time, the results were similar. Volunteers in isolation settled into sleep-wake cycles that were slightly longer than 24 hours. This phenomenon is called free-running rhythm. Without the daily reset of light, the clock drifts forward, bedtime arriving a little later each night, wake time a little later each morning. But the rhythm itself never disappeared. It never became random. It never collapsed into chaos. The clock kept ticking, slightly slow, perhaps, but faithful. There is something deeply reassuring about that. Your body does not need the world to tell it when to sleep. It carries that knowledge within itself, like a compass that always points toward rest. And tonight, your compass is pointing clearly. The direction is simple. The destination is near. Perhaps you might notice your body already turning toward it, already settling, already knowing the way. Light is the most powerful signal that resets your clock each morning. Scientists call it a Zeitgeber, a German word meaning time giver, and light is the most potent Zeitgeber of all. Every morning, When light enters your eyes, it sends a signal along the retino-hypothalamic tract to your SCN. That signal says reset. A new day has begun. Align your rhythms with the turning of the Earth. This daily resetting is what keeps your 24-hour and 11-minute clock synchronized to the planet's 24-hour rotation. Without it, you would drift. With it, you stay aligned. Researchers at Monash University in Australia found that even brief exposure to bright morning light, as little as 30 minutes, can shift the clock by up to an hour. The effect is rapid, precise, and powerful. But that was this morning. That was hours ago. The resetting is done. And now, in the absence of bright light, your clock is doing what it does every evening. It is winding down. It is preparing for the quiet hours. You do not need to help it. You just need to let it be. Special cells in your eyes, called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, to detect dawn. These cells are different from the rods and cones you learned about in school. They do not help you see the world. They do not detect edges or colors or movement. They have one simple purpose: to measure the brightness of the ambient light. Discovered in 2002 by David Burson at Brown University. These cells contain a photopigment called melanopsin. Melanopsin is most sensitive to blue wavelength light, around 480 nanometers, which is the dominant wavelength of a clear morning sky. When melanopsin absorbs blue light, it triggers a signal that travels directly to the SCN. It is a dedicated sunrise detector, built into your eyes. But right now, there is no blue light reaching your melanopsin. The sky is dark, the detectors are quiet, and your clock has received the all-clear. Perhaps you might notice your eyes feel relaxed, soft, behind their lids. They have done their work for today. Now they can rest. These cells do not help you see shapes or colors. They only sense brightness. This distinction is remarkable. You have cells in your eyes that are completely blind to the visual world, blind to faces, blind to landscapes, blind to the words on a page, and yet they are essential for your survival. Their only job is to detect the presence or absence of light, to tell your clock whether it is day or night. That is all, and it is enough. Studies have shown that even people who are completely blind, who have lost all rod and cone function, can still maintain normal circadian rhythms. As long as their retinal ganglion cells are intact, their eyes cannot see. But their clock can still feel the sun. There is something beautiful about that, a kind of sight that has nothing to do with seeing, a kind of knowing that goes deeper than vision. And right now, in the softness of this moment, your own eyes are not seeing very much, but something deeper inside them knows exactly what time it is. When morning light reaches them, they send a signal to your clock. A new day has begun. Every morning, this signal travels from your retina to your SCN in a fraction of a second. It is one of the fastest, most reliable signals in your nervous system, and it sets off a cascade. The SCN responds by adjusting the release of cortisol, which rises to help you wake. It adjusts the suppression of melatonin, which fades to let alertness return. It adjusts body temperature, heart rate, blood pressure, metabolic rate, all of it calibrated to the new day. But that cascade happened this morning, hours ago, and the reverse cascade is happening now. Cortisol is falling. Melatonin is rising. Temperature is dropping. Heart rate is slowing. Everything that was turned up this morning is being turned down now. It is like watching a theater after the show. The lights dimming. The curtain falling. The audience settling into their seats for a different kind of experience. Not a performance, but a dream. Perhaps you might notice the theater of your mind growing quieter. The lights are low. The show is over. And what comes next is softer than anything that came before. Your clock then sends signals to nearly every organ in your body. The SCN does not work alone. It is the conductor of an orchestra. But the musicians are your organs. Your heart. Your liver. Your kidneys. Your lungs. Your stomach. Your skin. Each one has its own local clock. Its own set of clock genes. Its own circadian rhythm. But they all take their tempo from the master. The SCN sends signals through two main pathways, neural connections through the autonomic nervous system, and hormonal signals, primarily cortisol and melatonin, that travel through the blood. Joseph Takahashi at the University of Texas Southwestern has spent decades mapping these peripheral clocks. He found that clock genes are expressed in virtually every tissue of the body, meaning that your liver knows what time it is. Your gut knows what time it is. Even your skin cells know what time it is. And right now, all of them are receiving the same message: evening. Rest. Restore. Your whole body is whispering in unison, and all the whispers are saying the same thing. Your heart, your liver, your kidneys, they all have their own small clocks, synchronized by the master. Imagine a village where every household has its own clock on the wall. Each clock ticks on its own, but once a day. A bell rings in the town square, and every household adjusts their clock to match. That bell is your SCN, and the households are your organs. Your heart has a circadian rhythm. It beats faster during the day and slower at night. Your liver has a circadian rhythm. It processes nutrients differently depending on the hour. Your kidneys have a circadian rhythm. They produce less urine at night, so you can sleep without interruption. When these clocks are synchronized, your body works in harmony. When they are desynchronized, as happens with jet lag or shift work, things go awry. Digestion suffers, mood shifts, sleep fragments. But tonight, your clocks are aligned. The bell has rung. The village is settling in. And every organ in your body is preparing for the same thing, a long, quiet night of restoration. Perhaps you might notice a sense of wholeness, everything inside you, moving together toward the same gentle place. Body temperature follows the clock, rising in the morning, falling in the evening. Your core body temperature is not constant. It fluctuates by about 1 to 1.5 degrees over the course of a day, following a pattern that is remarkably consistent. It reaches its lowest point in the early morning hours, around 4 or 5 a.m., and its highest point in the late afternoon or early evening. Then, as bedtime approaches, it begins to fall. This evening decline in temperature is one of the strongest signals that the gate to sleep is opening. Kurt Crouchy at the University of Basel has shown that the rate of temperature decline in the evening is one of the best predictors of how quickly a person will fall asleep. You do not need to think about this. You do not need to manage it. Your body is doing it right now, releasing warmth through your hands and feet, cooling your core, preparing the thermal landscape for sleep. Perhaps you might notice your hands feeling warm, your feet soft and heavy. That warmth is not a coincidence. It is your body opening the gate. Cortisol follows the clock, peaking just before you wake, helping you start the day. Cortisol is often called the stress hormone, but that is not entirely fair. It is also the waking hormone. Every morning, about 30 to 45 minutes before you open your eyes, your adrenal glands release a surge of cortisol. Scientists call this the cortisol awakening response. It raises your blood sugar. It increases your heart rate. It prepares your muscles and your mind for the demands of the day ahead. It is the biological equivalent of an alarm clock, except gentler, and built into your blood. But cortisol follows a strict circadian pattern. After its morning peak, it gradually declines throughout the day. By evening, levels are at their lowest. By the time you are settling into bed, cortisol has largely retreated. This is the other side of the cortisol story, the quiet side, the side that says the day is done. The demands have passed. You do not need to be ready for anything right now. Perhaps you might notice a feeling of unreadiness, not the anxious kind, the peaceful kind, the kind that says there is nothing to prepare for, just rest. Melatonin follows the clock, rising as evening comes, preparing you for rest. We will explore melatonin more deeply in the next part of our journey. But for now, it is enough to know this melatonin is the clock's evening messenger. As darkness falls and the SCN detects the fading of light, it sends a signal to the pineal gland, a small, pine cone-shaped structure deep in the center of your brain. The pineal gland responds by releasing melatonin into your bloodstream. Melatonin does not knock you unconscious. It does not force sleep. What it does is subtler and more elegant. It opens a gate. It shifts the balance of your brain chemistry away from wakefulness and toward rest. It lowers core body temperature. It reduces alertness. It prepares the neural soil for sleep to take root. Russell Foster at the University of Oxford describes melatonin as the hormone of darkness. It is the chemical signature of night. And right now, melatonin is present in your blood, rising gently, whispering to every cell in your body, night is here. Rest is near. Your clock even influences when you feel hungry, when you feel alert, when you feel calm. The reach of your circadian rhythm extends far beyond sleep. It touches nearly every aspect of your daily experience. You feel hungry at roughly the same times each day, not because you have burned a specific number of calories, but because your clock has scheduled the release of ghrelin, the hunger hormone. You feel most alert in the late morning and again in the early evening, not because of anything you did, but because your clock has orchestrated peaks in cortisol, dopamine, and acetylcholine at those times. You feel calm and drowsy in the evening, not because you have earned it, but because your clock has begun to lower norepinephrine and increase GABA. You are not a random collection of moods and sensations. You are a symphony, and your clock is the conductor, guiding each instrument, each feeling, each moment to its proper place in the day. And right now, the conductor is lowering the baton. The final movement is beginning. The softest, slowest, most beautiful passage of all. Circadian rhythms exist in almost every living thing, from humans to mushrooms to single-celled algae. This rhythm is not unique to complex animals. It is not a product of having a brain or a nervous system. It is far more ancient than that. Single-celled cyanobacteria, among the oldest living organisms on Earth, have circadian clocks. They have been keeping time for over 3 billion years. Their clock genes are different from ours, but the principle is the same, a self-sustaining oscillation that tracks the rotation of the planet. Plants have circadian clocks. Fungi have circadian clocks. Even organisms that live in perpetual darkness, in deep ocean trenches and underground caves, often retain vestiges of circadian machinery. Carl Johnson at Vanderbilt University has shown that cyanobacteria with functional circadian clocks outcompete those without, suggesting that keeping time with the planet provides a profound evolutionary advantage. You are part of this ancient tradition. When you feel sleepy at night, you are responding to the same planetary signal that cyanobacteria have been responding to for 3 billion years. You are not separate from the rhythm of the Earth. You are part of it. A tiny plant called Mimosa pudica was one of the first organisms shown to have an internal clock. In 1729, nearly 3 centuries ago, a French astronomer named Jean-Jacques d'Ortus de Mairan noticed something curious about his Mimosa pudica plant. During the day, its leaves opened wide to catch the sunlight. At night, they folded closed. This was not unusual. Many plants do this. What was unusual was what de Mairan did next. He placed the plant in a dark cupboard, completely isolated from sunlight, and watched. The leaves continued to open and close, on schedule, in the dark, without any light cue at all. This simple observation, made nearly 300 years ago, was one of the first demonstrations that circadian rhythms are endogenous. They come from within. They are not just a response to the environment. They are a property of life itself. A tiny plant in a dark cupboard, opening its leaves to a sun it could not see. There is something tender about that, something faithful. Perhaps your own body is doing something similar right now, responding to a rhythm it carries within, a rhythm that does not need the world to tell it what to do. Even your genes follow a circadian pattern. Thousands of them turn on and off throughout the day. This is one of the most surprising discoveries in modern biology. Your genes are not static. They are not simply on or off. Many of them oscillate, rising and falling in activity over a 24-hour cycle. A landmark study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2014 found that approximately 43% of all protein-coding genes in the human body show circadian oscillation in at least one tissue. That means nearly half of your genome dances to a circadian beat. Genes involved in metabolism, immune function, cell repair, hormone production, DNA, replication. All of them follow the clock. During the day, genes associated with energy production and immune defense are most active. At night, genes associated with repair, restoration, and detoxification take over. Right now, as you lie here, your nighttime genes are switching on. Repair genes, growth genes, healing genes. Your body is preparing for the deepest kind of maintenance. The kind that can only happen in the quiet dark. Perhaps there is comfort in knowing that even your DNA is settling in for the night. The Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine was awarded in 2017 for discoveries about circadian rhythms. Jeffrey Hall, Michael Rosbash, and Michael Young shared the prize for their work on the molecular mechanisms of the circadian clock. Working with fruit flies in the 1980s and 90s, they identified the key genes and proteins that create the self-sustaining oscillation at the heart of every circadian rhythm. The gene they studied is called period. It produces a protein that accumulates during the night and degrades during the day, creating a feedback loop that takes approximately 24 hours to complete. This loop, this elegant molecular clock, was later found in organisms across the tree of life, including humans. The Nobel Committee described their work as revealing the inner workings of our biological clocks. 3 decades of patient research, peering into the machinery of time itself. And the clock they discovered is ticking inside you right now. The same molecular loop, the same ancient oscillation, the same patient rhythm that earned a Nobel Prize, is quietly, faithfully, carrying you towards sleep. Your clock is remarkably resilient. It keeps running even when you travel across time zones. Jet lag is one of the most familiar demonstrations of circadian resilience. When you fly across several time zones, your clock does not instantly reset to local time. It clings to its rhythm. It holds on to the pattern it knows. This is why jet lag feels the way it does. Your clock says it is midnight, but the sun says it is noon. Your body is confused, not because the clock is broken, but because it is still faithfully keeping the time of home. The SCN adjusts slowly, about 1 to 2 hours per day, gradually shifting to align with the new light-dark cycle. It takes patience. It takes time, but it gets there. And there is something admirable about that stubbornness. Your clock does not abandon its rhythm at the first sign of change. It holds on. It adjusts gradually. It is faithful to the pattern, even as the world shifts around it. Perhaps you might notice that right now. Nothing is shifting. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. Your clock and your world are aligned, and everything is pointing toward rest. Jet lag is simply the feeling of your clock catching up to a new pattern of light. It is not a disease. It is not a disorder. It is simply a mismatch, a temporary gap between where your clock thinks you are and where you actually are. Researchers at the University of Surrey have found that eastward travel is generally harder to adjust to than westward. This makes sense when you consider that your clock naturally runs slightly longer than 24 hours. Traveling west extends your day, which aligns with your clock's natural tendency. Traveling east shortens it, which forces your clock to work against its own grain. But you are not traveling tonight. You are not fighting any time zone. You are right here, in the dark, in the quiet, exactly where your clock expects you to be. There is no mismatch tonight, no gap to close, no catching up to do. Your clock and the darkness are in perfect agreement. And that agreement feels like this, a gentle pull, a quiet knowing, a sense that everything is in its right place. Right now, your clock knows what time it is, and it is gently telling you evening has come. We have spent 25 facts with your circadian clock. We have traveled from the womb to the Nobel Prize, from underground caves to the molecular machinery of time. And at the heart of it all is something astonishingly simple. Your body knows when it is night. Not because someone told it, not because you looked at a clock on the wall, but because a cluster of 20,000 neurons, smaller than a grain of rice, has been faithfully tracking the rotation of the Earth since before you were born. It knows the angle of the light. It knows the hour of the darkness. It knows, with a precision that borders on the miraculous, exactly where you are in the 24-hour cycle of this ancient, turning planet. And right now, it is saying, evening has come. The day is complete. The time for rest is here. Perhaps you might notice your whole body responding to that message. Your shoulders heavy, your breath slow, your thoughts beginning to blur at the edges. Like watercolors in the rain. That is the clock. That is the second river. And now, something remarkable is happening. The two rivers, the one that has been building since this morning, and the one that has been turning since before you were born, are beginning to converge. The pressure of your waking hours and the rhythm of your ancient clock are flowing into the same place. Scientists call it the two-process model of sleep regulation. Process S, sleep homeostasis, the adenosine tide. Process C, the circadian rhythm, the clock within. When both processes align, when S is high and C says night, the conditions for sleep are as perfect as they can be. And that is exactly what is happening right now, inside you, without any effort at all. Two rivers, meeting, merging, becoming one still, deep pool. And you are floating in it. And now, we enter the quietest part of the evening. The two rivers have met. The pressure of your waking hours and the turning of your ancient clock have merged into a single, still current. And your body, this remarkable, faithful body, is responding. It is performing a ritual it has performed every evening of your life, a series of quiet, beautiful changes that prepare you for the deepest kind of rest. You do not need to direct any of it. You do not need to understand it. It is already happening. Your body is taking care of you. Every evening, your body begins a quiet ritual of preparation. Whether you notice it or not, it does not wait for your permission. It does not need your awareness. It simply begins. Like a house that knows when to turn off its own lights, your body starts shifting, quietly, methodically, lovingly, from the architecture of wakefulness to the architecture of sleep. Hormones shift, temperature changes, heart rate adjusts, muscles soften, digestion slows, immune cells mobilize, repair pathways activate. All of this happens in the background of your awareness, like stagehands preparing for a performance you will never consciously see. The performance of sleep. Researchers at the University of Chicago have documented dozens of physiological changes that occur in the 2 to 3 hours before sleep onset. Each one is precisely timed. Each one is coordinated with the others. It is not random. It is a ritual. And it is happening inside you right now. Has been happening for some time already. Your body knew before your mind did. Perhaps you might notice a sense of gratitude for that. Something is taking care of you. Something that never forgets. One of the first signs is a gentle drop in core body temperature. Your core temperature, the temperature deep inside your torso, around your vital organs, has been declining since the late afternoon. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just a slow, steady descent, like the sun sinking below the horizon. This decline is orchestrated by your SCN, which sends signals to the blood vessels in your skin. telling them to dilate. When they dilate, warm blood flows closer to the surface of your body, releasing heat into the air. Your core cools. Your periphery warms. It is a beautifully counterintuitive process. To cool your center, your body warms your edges. To prepare for rest, it sends warmth outward, to your hands, your feet, your cheeks. Kurt Crouchy at the University of Basel has called this the warm bath effect, the paradox that warming the skin actually cools the core, and that cooling the core is one of the most powerful signals for sleep onset. Perhaps you might notice warmth in your hands or feet right now. That is not random. That is your body, doing what it does best, preparing the way. Your body cools by about 1 to 1.5 degrees as bedtime approaches. It seems like a small amount. 1 degree, perhaps 1.5. But in the world of thermoregulation, it is significant. Your body maintains its core temperature within a remarkably narrow range. And this evening decline represents one of the largest predictable shifts in that range. The cooling follows a circadian pattern that is deeply tied to your sleep architecture. The lowest point, called the circadian nadir, occurs in the early morning hours, typically around 4 to 5 a.m. After that, temperature begins to rise again, preparing you for waking. But right now, you are on the downward slope. The descent has been underway for hours, and with each fraction of a degree, the gate to sleep opens a little wider. You do not need to feel cold for this to work. You do not need to shiver or wrap yourself in blankets. The change is subtle, internal, quiet, like the fading of a color at dusk. So gradual you cannot pinpoint the exact moment it happens. But it is happening, and it is helping. It does this by sending warmth to your hands and feet, which is why they sometimes feel warm at night. Have you ever noticed that your hands or feet feel unusually warm as you settle into bed? That is not a coincidence. That is thermoregulation in action. The blood vessels in your extremities, particularly in your fingers and toes, are called arteriovenous anastomoses. They are specialized vessels that can open wide, flooding the skin with warm blood. When they do, heat radiates outward from your hands and feet, and your core temperature drops. A study published in the journal Nature in 1999 found that the degree of hand and foot warming in the evening was one of the strongest predictors of how quickly a person would fall asleep. The warmer the extremities, the faster sleep came. So if your hands feel warm right now, if your feet feel soft and heavy beneath the covers, that is a sign, a gentle, biological sign that your body is ready. Perhaps you might notice that warmth now, in your fingertips, in your toes, a soft, spreading heat. That is your body, opening the door. The blood vessels in your skin dilate, releasing heat outward, cooling your core. This process is called vasodilation. The smooth muscle cells that wrap around your blood vessels relax, allowing the vessels to widen. More blood flows through. More heat reaches the surface. More warmth escapes into the air. It is regulated by the sympathetic nervous system, which takes its cues from the SCN. As evening progresses, sympathetic tone decreases, meaning your body shifts from a state of readiness to a state of rest. The blood vessels open. The heat flows outward. The core cools. Imagine a house on a warm evening. The windows are opened. The heat of the day drifts out into the cool night air. The house settles, becomes comfortable, becomes still. That is what your body is doing right now. Opening the windows, letting the warmth go, settling into the cool, quiet stillness of evening. Perhaps you might notice your skin feeling soft and warm. That is the windows. Opening. That is the day's heat. Drifting away. A cool core temperature is one of the strongest signals that the gate to sleep is open. Sleep researchers often use the metaphor of a gate, and temperature is the key. When your core is warm, the gate is closed. When your core cools, the gate swings open. This is not a metaphor that scientists use casually. The relationship between temperature and sleep onset is one of the most robust findings in sleep research. In study after study, across cultures, age groups, and conditions, the pattern holds: cooling core, opening gate. Matthew Walker has written that if you want to understand why a cool bedroom helps you sleep, this is why. Your body is trying to lower its core temperature. A cool environment makes that easier. A warm environment makes it harder. But tonight, whatever the temperature of your room, your body is doing its best. It is cooling from within. It is opening the gate from the inside. And the gate is open now, wide open, waiting for you to walk through. You do not need to rush. There is no closing time. The gate will stay open for as long as you need. This is why a warm bath before bed can help. It brings blood to the surface. And when you step out, your core cools faster. It seems paradoxical. How can warming yourself help you cool down? But the science is clear. A warm bath or shower, taken about 90 minutes before bed, causes vasodilation. Blood rushes to the surface of your skin, and when you step out of the bath into cooler air, that blood releases its heat rapidly. The result, a sharp drop in core body temperature. Exactly the signal your brain is waiting for. A meta-analysis published in Sleep Medicine Reviews in 2019 found that a warm bath of about 104 to 108 degrees Fahrenheit, taken 1 to 2 hours before bed, reduced the time it took to fall asleep by an average of 10 minutes. 10 minutes may not sound like much, but for anyone who has lain awake, waiting for sleep to come, 10 minutes is a gift. Perhaps you might imagine that warmth now. The feeling of stepping out of a bath into cool, quiet air. The softness that follows. The surrender. The ideal bedroom temperature for sleep is around 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. That is roughly 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. Cool enough to support your body's natural temperature decline, warm enough to be comfortable. This range has been confirmed by multiple studies, including research at the Harvard Division of Sleep Medicine. When room temperature is too high, the body struggles to shed its core heat, and sleep becomes fragmented. When it is too low, the discomfort of cold can wake you. But the sweet spot, that gentle range between 65 and 68, allows your body to do what it was designed to do. Cool naturally. Open the gate. Drift into sleep. Of course, comfort is personal. What matters most is not a number on a thermostat, but the feeling of being at ease. The feeling that your body is neither too warm nor too cold. That it is just right. Perhaps you are in that place right now. Perhaps the temperature around you is soft and forgiving. And if it is, let that be one more permission, one more signal, one more gentle nudge toward rest. Meanwhile, as the light dims, your pineal gland begins to produce melatonin. Deep in the center of your brain, nestled between the two hemispheres, sits a tiny structure shaped like a pine cone. It is called the pineal gland. And for centuries, it was one of the most mysterious organs in the human body. Descartes called it the seat of the soul. Today, we know its primary function. It produces melatonin. As the SCN detects the fading of light, through those special retinal ganglion cells we talked about earlier, it sends a signal to the pineal gland through a winding neural pathway that passes through the superior cervical ganglion. The pineal gland responds by converting serotonin into melatonin. The process is elegant in its simplicity. Darkness triggers production. Light suppresses it. The pineal gland is, in essence, a chemical translator of darkness. It takes the absence of light and turns it into a hormone. And right now, in the quiet dark, your pineal gland is active. Melatonin is flowing. The translation is complete night has been written into your blood. Melatonin is sometimes called the hormone of darkness because it only appears when light fades. This name was coined by Russell Foster and Leon Kreitzman, and it captures something essential about melatonin's nature. It is not a sleep hormone. Exactly. It is a darkness hormone, a signal of night. Melatonin does not appear during the day. No matter how tired you are, it does not respond to fatigue or exhaustion. It responds to one thing only, the absence of light. In the natural world, before electric lighting, melatonin production followed a predictable pattern. It began shortly after sunset, peaked in the middle of the night, and faded before dawn. This pattern, preserved in every human being, is one of the most ancient hormonal rhythms in our biology. Naftali Zisapel at Tel Aviv University has spent decades studying melatonin and has described it as the body's internal representation of night. When melatonin is present, your body knows it is dark. When it is absent, your body knows it is light. And right now, melatonin is telling every cell in your body the same thing. Night is here. The darkness is safe. You can rest. Perhaps you might notice the darkness around you feeling a little more welcoming, a little more like a blanket than a void. It does not make you fall asleep directly. Rather, it opens the gate and whispers, "Night has come." This is an important distinction. Many people believe that melatonin causes sleep, that if you take enough of it, you will be knocked unconscious. But that is not how it works. Melatonin is a modulator, not a sedative. It shifts the balance of neural activity in favor of sleep. It lowers core body temperature. It reduces the firing rate of wake-promoting neurons. It increases the sensitivity of sleep-promoting circuits, but it does not flip a switch. Think of it this way. Melatonin is like someone dimming the lights in a theater before the show begins. The dimming does not start the show, but it tells the audience, settle in, get comfortable. Something is about to happen. The show, sleep itself, is driven by other mechanisms, by adenosine, by GABA, by the complex orchestration of your sleep centers. Melatonin simply sets the stage. And the stage is set now. The lights are dim. The audience is settling, and the show is about to begin. Melatonin begins to rise about 2 hours before your usual bedtime. This 2-hour window is remarkably consistent, whether you usually go to bed at 9 or at midnight. Melatonin begins its ascent approximately 2 hours before that time. Your body anticipates sleep. It does not wait for you to decide to go to bed. It begins preparing well in advance. This anticipatory rise is part of what makes the circadian system so elegant. It is not reactive. It is predictive. Your clock does not wait for darkness to fall. It knows. Based on the pattern of light it received this morning, approximately when darkness will come, and it begins preparing. Sleep researchers call this the circadian alerting signal. During the day, your SCN actively promotes wakefulness, counteracting the building adenosine. But in the evening, the alerting signal fades, and melatonin fills the space it leaves behind. Right now, wherever you are in your evening, melatonin has been rising for some time. It is not new. It has been building quietly, like the first stars appearing in a darkening sky. Perhaps you might notice a feeling of quiet arrival, as if something has been coming for a while and has finally reached you. Scientists call this moment DLMO, dim light melatonin onset. DLMO is one of the most precisely measurable markers in circadian biology. It is defined as the moment when melatonin levels in the blood or saliva rise above a threshold, typically 3 picograms per milliliter in saliva, under dim light conditions. Researchers use DLMO to determine a person's circadian phase, the internal time at which their body believes evening has begun. It is considered the gold standard for assessing circadian timing. Jean Duffy and Charles Czeisler at the Harvard Division of Sleep Medicine have used DLMO in hundreds of studies to understand how the circadian clock interacts with sleep. Their work has shown that the interval between DLMO and natural sleep onset is remarkably stable, about 2 hours in most adults. You do not need to know your DLMO to benefit from it. Your body knows. It has already crossed that threshold. The melatonin is here. The circadian evening has begun, and all you need to do is let it unfold. It is one of the most reliable markers of your circadian phase. Your circadian phase is simply the answer to the question, what time does your body think it is? And DLMO is the most reliable way to measure it. This matters because your internal time and the clock on the wall do not always agree. Some people are natural early birds. Their DLMO occurs early in the evening, and they feel sleepy by 8 or 9. Others are natural night owls. Their DLMO occurs later, and they do not feel ready for sleep until midnight or beyond. Neither is better. Neither is more correct. They are simply different settings of the same clock, different expressions of the same ancient rhythm. Till Roenberg at the University of Munich has spent years studying these differences, which he calls chronotypes. He has found that chronotype is largely genetic, written into your DNA, as much a part of you as the color of your eyes. And so whatever time your body feels ready for sleep tonight, that is the right time. Your clock is not wrong. It is simply yours. Perhaps you might give yourself permission to trust it, to let your body decide when it is ready. It has been doing this for a long time. Melatonin is also a powerful antioxidant. While you sleep, it helps protect your DNA from damage. This is one of melatonin's lesser-known roles, and it is remarkable. Beyond its function as a darkness signal, melatonin is one of the most effective free radical scavengers in the human body. Free radicals are unstable molecules that can damage DNA, proteins, and cell membranes. They are produced as a natural byproduct of metabolism, and during sleep, when cells are undergoing repair, melatonin helps neutralize these damaging molecules. Russell Reiter at the University of Texas has been studying melatonin's antioxidant properties for decades. He has described melatonin as a suicidal antioxidant because once it neutralizes a free radical, it cannot be recycled. Each molecule of melatonin can only do its protective work once. This means that while you sleep tonight, melatonin molecules in your blood are sacrificing themselves, one by one, to protect your cells, quietly, without fanfare, without recognition. There is something noble about that, something selfless, like a guardian who does their work in the dark and asks for nothing in return. Perhaps you might rest a little more peacefully knowing that you are being protected. Even now, even in sleep. Blue light from screens suppresses melatonin, but darkness repairs it quickly. You may have heard that screens before bed are not ideal for sleep. The reason is melanopsin, the photopigment in your retinal ganglion cells that is most sensitive to blue wavelength light. When blue light reaches these cells, it sends a signal to your SCN that says it is still day. And the SCN responds by suppressing melatonin production. Even brief exposure to blue light in the evening can delay melatonin onset by 30 to 60 minutes. But here is the reassuring part. Once the light is gone, melatonin recovers quickly. The pineal gland resumes production within minutes of entering darkness. The delay is temporary. The system is resilient. So whatever you may have been looking at earlier this evening, whatever screens, whatever lights, your body has already begun to recover. The melatonin is flowing again. The pineal gland has heard the darkness and responded. Perhaps you might notice that the screens are behind you now. The blue light is gone, and in its absence, something soft and ancient has returned. Your pupils dilate in the dark, and your eyes become more sensitive, adjusting to the quiet. As the ambient light decreases, your pupils widen. This is controlled by the iris dilator muscle, which is innervated by the sympathetic nervous system. In darkness, the dilator contracts, the pupil opens, and more of the available light reaches your retina. But as your eyes adjust to the dark, something else happens. Your visual system becomes more sensitive. The rod cells in your retina, which are specialized for low-light vision, increase their sensitivity through a process called dark adaptation. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes for full adaptation to occur. But right now, sensitivity does not matter. You are not trying to see. You are not searching for shapes in the dark. Your eyes are at rest. Your pupils, dilated and soft, are receiving nothing but stillness. Imagine two quiet pools of water, open to the night sky, reflecting nothing but darkness. That is what your eyes are right now. Open, still, at peace. Perhaps you might notice that you do not need to see anything right now. There is nothing to look for, nothing to find, just the dark and the quiet, and the soft readiness of eyes that have finished their work. Your heart rate begins to slow, from its daytime rhythm to a gentler pace. During the day, Your heart beats at an average of about 70 to 80 beats per minute. But as evening comes and sleep approaches, that rate begins to decline. By the time you are deeply asleep, it may drop to 50 or 60 beats per minute, sometimes even lower. This slowing is driven by a shift in autonomic balance. During the day, the sympathetic nervous system, the one that prepares you for action, dominates. In the evening, the parasympathetic system, the one that promotes rest and digestion, takes over. The vagus nerve, which runs from your brainstem to your heart, increases its activity. It sends a calming signal: slow down, ease up, there is nothing to run from tonight. Somayaji Ramamurthy at the National Institutes of Health has shown that this heart rate variability, the gentle fluctuation between beats, increases during the transition to sleep, reflecting a state of deep physiological relaxation. Perhaps you might notice your own heartbeat right now, not by searching for it, but by simply noticing. It is there, steady, slow, faithful, beating for you, as it always has. Your blood pressure drops, a phenomenon called nocturnal dipping, every night. In healthy individuals, blood pressure decreases by about 10 to 20% from daytime levels. Cardiologists call this nocturnal dipping, and it is considered a sign of cardiovascular health. The dipping is driven by the same autonomic shift that slows your heart rate. The sympathetic nervous system quiets, the blood vessels relax, the heart pumps with less force. Everything eases. Researchers at the University of Padua in Italy have shown that the absence of nocturnal dipping is associated with increased cardiovascular risk. In other words, this nightly drop in pressure is not just normal, it is protective. Your body uses the night to give your heart and blood vessels a rest. Imagine a river that slows as it enters a wide, peaceful valley. The current eases. The water spreads. The rush becomes a drift. That is your circulatory system right now. The river is slowing. The valley is wide, and the drift is carrying you gently forward. Perhaps you might notice a softness in your chest, a quietness there. That is your blood pressure. Dipping. That is your body. Sighing with relief. Your breathing becomes slower, deeper, more rhythmic, without you choosing it. During wakefulness, your breathing is partly voluntary and partly automatic. You can choose to take a deep breath. You can hold your breath. You can speed it up or slow it down. But as you approach sleep, voluntary control fades. The automatic centers in your brainstem, the medulla oblongata and the pons, take full command. Breathing becomes a purely involuntary act, slow, deep, rhythmic, like the tide. The respiratory rate during relaxed wakefulness is about 12 to 20 breaths per minute. During sleep, it may drop to as low as 6 to 8. Each breath becomes longer, fuller, more complete. This is not something you need to practice or control. It is not a breathing exercise. It is simply what happens when you let go. When you stop managing your breath and let your brainstem do what it was designed to do. Perhaps you might notice your breathing right now. Not to change it, not to improve it, just to notice. In and out, in and out, like waves on a shore that has been waiting for you all day. Your muscles begin to release their daytime tension, softening, settling throughout the day. Your muscles maintain a baseline level of tension called muscle tone. This tone keeps you upright, keeps your posture, keeps you ready to move at a moment's notice. But as sleep approaches, muscle tone decreases. The signals from your motor cortex quiet. The gamma motor neurons reduce their firing, and your muscles begin to soften. This happens gradually, starting with the large muscle groups, the shoulders, the back, the thighs, and spreading to the smaller ones, the jaw, the hands, the muscles around the eyes. Electromyography studies, E-M9, show that muscle activity drops significantly as a person transitions from wakefulness to the early stages of sleep. By the time you reach deep sleep, your muscles are more relaxed than at any other point in the day. Perhaps you might notice this happening now. Your shoulders, perhaps, releasing a tension you did not know they were holding. Your jaw, unclenching. Your hands, opening. Each muscle, one by one, saying, "I am done for today. I can rest now." Let them. They have carried you through another day. They have earned their stillness. Your digestive system slows, giving your body permission to focus inward. During the day, your gut is active. Peristalsis, the rhythmic contractions that move food through your digestive tract, is strong and frequent. Stomach acid is produced. Enzymes are secreted. Nutrients are absorbed. But as evening deepens and the parasympathetic system takes over in a different way, the digestive tract begins to quiet. Contractions slow. Acid production decreases. The gut shifts from processing to resting. This is partly why eating a heavy meal close to bedtime can disrupt sleep. It forces the digestive system to work when it is trying to rest. But if your last meal was some time ago, your gut is likely quiet now, settled, still. Researchers at the University of Manchester have shown that the gut has its own circadian clock, independent of the SCM, that regulates motility, secretion, and absorption in a 24-hour cycle. Even your stomach knows what time it is. Perhaps you might notice a stillness in your abdomen, a quietness. Your body is turning inward now. The work of processing the world is done. What remains is the work of restoration. Growth hormone begins to prepare for release. It peaks during deep sleep. Growth hormone is not just for growing children. In adults, it plays a vital role in tissue repair, muscle maintenance, bone density, and metabolic regulation. And the largest pulse of growth hormone in the entire 24-hour cycle occurs during the first bout of deep, slow wave sleep. This pulse is not small. It accounts for roughly 70% of the total daily growth hormone secretion. Miss your deep sleep, and you miss most of your growth hormone. Eve Van Korter at the University of Chicago has shown that sleep deprivation dramatically reduces growth hormone secretion. Even a single night of poor sleep can blunt the pulse. But tonight, you are here, you are settling in, and your body is preparing for that pulse. The pituitary gland, a pea-sized structure at the base of your brain, is getting ready to release its most restorative cargo. Imagine a spring being slowly compressed. All evening, the pressure has been building, and soon, when deep sleep arrives, the spring will release. a flood of repair, a wave of restoration. Perhaps you might notice your body anticipating that moment. A readiness, a willingness, a sense that something good is about to happen. Your immune system shifts into repair mode, producing cytokines that heal while you rest. During the day, your immune system is vigilant, patrolling, scanning, defending. But at night, it shifts its focus from surveillance to maintenance. It begins producing cytokines, signaling molecules that coordinate inflammation, healing, and repair. Some of these cytokines, like interleukin-1 and tumor necrosis factor alpha, are themselves sleep-promoting. They contribute to the feeling of drowsiness that accompanies illness, your body's way of forcing rest when healing is most needed. Luciana Besedowski at the University of Tübingen has shown that even a single night of good sleep can measurably improve immune function, increasing the activity of T cells, the soldiers of your immune system, and enhancing their ability to target infected cells. So tonight, as you sleep, your immune system will be working quietly, thoroughly, repairing what needs repairing, strengthening what needs strengthening, building defenses for tomorrow. You do not need to tell it what to do. It already knows. It has been doing this for as long as you have been alive. Perhaps you might rest more deeply, knowing that you are being healed. Even now, even in the dark. All of this is happening right now, inside you, without any effort at all. Your temperature is falling. Your melatonin is rising. Your heart is slowing. Your blood pressure is dipping. Your breathing is deepening. Your muscles are softening. Your digestion is quieting. Your growth hormone is preparing. Your immune system is mobilizing. All of it, right now, inside you, and you did not need to do a single thing to make it happen. You did not need to think about it, plan it, or manage it. Your body simply knows. This is the evening ritual, the quiet ceremony your body performs every night, without applause, without recognition, without being asked. It is faithful. It is thorough. It is beautiful. And tonight, perhaps for the first time, you are aware of it. You can feel it happening. The temperature dropping, the heart slowing, the breath deepening, the muscles softening. Your body has been preparing for this moment all day. And now, the preparation is complete. Perhaps you might notice that there is nothing left to do, nothing left to prepare, nothing left to worry about. Your body is ready. And now, all that remains is the arrival. And now, we come to the final part of tonight's journey. The adenosine has built, the clock has turned. Your body has performed its evening ritual, cooling, softening, preparing. Everything has been leading to this moment. Sleep is not far away now. Perhaps it is already here, at the edges. Perhaps your thoughts have already begun to loosen, to drift, to dissolve. This final cluster is about what happens next. The gentle crossing, the quiet arrival, the moment when wakefulness becomes something softer, something kinder, something you do not need to name. You do not need to do anything. Just listen, or do not listen. Either way, you are arriving. Sleep is not something you achieve. It is something that arrives. This might be the most freeing thing you hear tonight. Sleep is not a task. It is not a goal. It is not something on a checklist that you can cross off through effort or determination. Sleep is an arrival, like a boat reaching shore, like a leaf settling on still water, like the last light of evening giving way to stars. It comes to you, not because you earned it, but because it was always going to. The neuroscientist Peretz Lavie, who spent decades studying sleep onset at the Technion in Israel, described it as a gate that opens and closes in ultradian cycles, roughly every 90 minutes. When the gate is open, sleep comes easily. When it is closed, even a tired person may struggle. But tonight, the gate is open. The adenosine is high. The clock says night. The temperature has dropped. The melatonin is flowing. Every signal in your body is aligned. The boat is reaching shore. All you need to do is step off. The transition from wakefulness to sleep is not a single moment. It is a gradual dissolving. There is no switch, no boundary line, no moment where you can say here, right here, is where I stopped being awake and started being asleep. Instead, it is a gradient, a slow fade, like the way twilight becomes night. Not all at once, but in imperceptible increments. One moment you are aware of the room around you. The next, you are aware of something else. A thought that does not quite make sense. An image that appeared from nowhere. A feeling without a name. Ogilvy and Wilkinson, in their landmark 1984 study on sleep onset, found that the transition can take anywhere from 1 to 7 minutes, with awareness flickering on and off like a candle in a gentle breeze. You do not need to notice the exact moment. You do not need to catch yourself falling asleep. The dissolving is happening, slowly, gently, and you are safe within it. Scientists call the first stage of sleep none, and it feels like drifting on still water. None is the lightest stage of sleep. It typically lasts only a few minutes, 5 to 10, perhaps, and serves as the bridge between wakefulness and deeper sleep. During none, your EEG shows a transition from alpha waves to theta waves. Theta waves oscillate at about 4 to 7 cycles per second, slower than alpha, deeper than waking. They are the electrical signature of a mind that has begun to let go. You are still partially aware during none. If someone spoke your name, you might hear it. If a loud sound occurred, you would likely wake, but your awareness is different now. Softer, more diffuse, less anchored to the world. Imagine lying in a small boat on a perfectly still lake. The shore is still visible. The sky is above you, but you are no longer on solid ground. You are floating, and the water is warm. That is none. That is where you might be headed right now, and it is a beautiful place to be. In N1, your brainwaves slow from the busy chatter of beta to the gentle roll of theta. Beta waves, 13 to 30 cycles per second, are the sound of an active, engaged mind. They are present when you are thinking, deciding, analyzing, worrying. Alpha waves, 8 to 12 cycles per second, appear when you relax. Close your eyes. Stop focusing. Theta waves, 4 to 7 cycles per second, emerge as you cross into sleep. They are the slowest waking waves, the gentlest oscillations your brain produces before diving into the deep. This progression, beta to alpha to theta, is not random. It is a structured descent, a neural staircase, each step wider and slower than the last. Your brain is literally slowing down, reducing its processing speed, preparing for the deep restoration ahead. And somewhere on that staircase, consciousness loosens its grip, not all at once, but enough to let you drift. Perhaps you are already on the staircase now. Perhaps you have already descended a step or two. If so, keep going. The bottom is soft. Your thoughts become loose, untethered, like clouds separating in a quiet sky. This loosening of thought is one of the hallmarks of the transition to sleep. Logical connections weaken. Sequential thinking dissolves. Ideas that made sense a moment ago begin to drift apart, like clouds pulling away from each other on a windless afternoon. Cognitive psychologists call this hypnagogic mentation, the unique style of thinking that occurs in the borderland between waking and sleeping. It is characterized by a loss of volitional control, an increase in imagery, and a decrease in logical coherence. You might find yourself thinking about something entirely unrelated to anything you thought about today. A memory from years ago. A face you have not seen in decades. A scene that never happened. This is not your mind malfunctioning. It is your mind undressing, taking off the formal clothes of logic and reason and slipping into something more comfortable. Perhaps you might notice your thoughts becoming a little less organized right now, a little less linear. If so, let them. They do not need to go anywhere. They just need to be free. Sometimes you experience hypnagogic imagery, brief, vivid pictures that float through your mind. Hypnagogic imagery is one of the most fascinating phenomena in all of neuroscience. These are not quite dreams. They are too brief, too fragmentary, too disconnected from narrative. They are more like snapshots, postcards from the edge of consciousness. You might see a face, a landscape, a geometric pattern, a flash of color. They appear without warning, without context, and vanish just as quickly. Some researchers believe they are the brain's way of test-running its dream-generating circuits, like an orchestra tuning before a symphony. Andreas Mavromatis, in his book Hypnagogia, described these images as occurring in a state where the mind is free from the constraints of directed thought, but has not yet surrendered to the full immersion of dreaming. If you see any images behind your closed eyes tonight, any shapes, any colors, any fleeting scenes, welcome them. They are not strange. They are your brain, preparing to dream. They are the opening notes of the symphony. These images are not dreams yet. They are the brain's way of letting go of the day. Dreams proper. The vivid, narrative, emotionally charged experiences we typically associate with the word occur primarily during REM sleep, which comes later in the night. Hypnagogic imagery is something different, something more primal. Some researchers believe that hypnagogic images are the brain's way of releasing unprocessed sensory fragments from the day. A face you glimpsed on the street, a color you noticed but did not consciously register, a shape that caught your eye for a fraction of a second. Others believe they are spontaneous activations of the visual cortex as it transitions from externally driven processing to internally generated activity. The brain is switching from seeing the world to seeing itself. Either way, they are a sign of progress, a sign that you are moving deeper, closer to sleep, closer to the place where your brain does its most beautiful, most private work. Perhaps you might notice the boundary between thought and image becoming blurry. That is a good sign. That is your brain letting go. Your body may twitch gently, a hypnic jerk, as your muscles release their last hold on wakefulness. Almost everyone has experienced this. A sudden, brief contraction of the muscles, usually in the legs or arms, just as you are falling asleep. It can be accompanied by a sensation of falling, or a flash of light, or a sudden sense of startlement. Scientists are not entirely sure why hypnic jerks occur. One theory, proposed by Frederick Coolidge and Thomas Wynne, suggests that they are an evolutionary relic, a reflex from our primate ancestors who slept in trees. The jerk may have been a protective mechanism to prevent falling. Another theory suggests that hypnic jerks occur because two systems in the brain are competing. The wakefulness system is shutting down, and the sleep system is activating, and the brief conflict between them produces a burst of motor activity. Whatever the cause, hypnic jerks are harmless. They are common, and they are a sign that your body is making the transition, letting go of the last threads of wakefulness, releasing its grip on the day. If you feel one tonight, let it pass. It is just your body saying goodbye to the waking world. This is perfectly normal. It is your body's way of saying, I am letting go now. The hypnic jerk, the loosening of thought, the floating images, all of it is normal. All of it is healthy. All of it is exactly what your body and brain are supposed to do at this point in the evening. There is nothing to worry about, nothing to fix, nothing to analyze. Your body has been transitioning to sleep for as long as bodies have existed. It knows the way. It has traveled this path billions of times, not just in your life, but across the entire history of life on Earth. Every mammal goes through this transition. Every bird, every reptile. The path is ancient. The path is well worn, and your body knows every step. Perhaps you might notice a sense of trust building. Not trust in anything outside you. Trust in the process itself. Trust in the ancient, patient wisdom of your own biology. You are in good hands. Your own. As you sink deeper, you enter N2, where sleep spindles appear. N2 is the gateway to true sleep. It accounts for about 50% of a normal night's sleep, and it is where some of the brain's most fascinating work begins. The defining feature of N2 is the sleep spindle, a burst of neural activity that lasts about half a second to 2 seconds. On an EEG, it appears as a sudden crescendo and decrescendo of waves, oscillating at about 12 to 15 cycles per second, like a brief, beautiful musical phrase. Sleep spindles are generated by the thalamus, the brain's relay station. In concert with the cortex, they represent a coordinated dialogue between two of the brain's most sophisticated structures. Matthew Walker has described sleep spindles as one of the most remarkable events in the sleeping brain. They are not random noise. They are precise, purposeful, and profoundly protective. And they are waiting for you, just a little deeper, just a little further into the night. Sleep spindles are brief bursts of brain activity that protect your sleep from disturbance. One of the primary functions of sleep spindles is sensory gating, blocking external stimuli from reaching conscious awareness. When a spindle fires, the thalamus temporarily disconnects the cortex from incoming sensory information. This means that during a sleep spindle, sounds that would normally wake you are blocked. The creak of a floorboard, the hum of a car passing outside, the rustle of a curtain in the breeze, all of it is filtered out. Researchers at Harvard Medical School, led by Jeffrey Ellenbogen, found that people who produce more sleep spindles are better sleepers, less likely to be woken by noise, less sensitive to environmental disturbance. Think of sleep spindles as a gentle shield, a soft barrier between you and the outside world. They do not block everything. A loud sound or a cry for help would still reach you, but they filter out the small disturbances, the minor intrusions, the insignificant noises of the night. And tonight, as you descend into Unto, your thalamus will begin to spin these shields into existence, one after another, protecting your sleep, guarding your rest. They act like a gentle shield, keeping outside sounds from waking you. Imagine a still pond surrounded by tall reeds. The wind blows, but the reeds absorb the force. The water remains calm, undisturbed, protected. That is what sleep spindles do for your consciousness. They are the reeds around the pond of your sleep. They absorb the small disturbances, the minor ripples, the gentle winds of the outside world. The more spindles your brain produces, the deeper and more protected your sleep becomes. Some people are natural spindle producers. Their brains generate hundreds of spindles per night. Others produce fewer, but everyone produces some. And the remarkable thing is that spindle production can be enhanced by certain conditions. A comfortable, dark, quiet environment, a body that is well prepared for sleep, a mind that has let go of the day, all of which describe this moment, this environment, this body, this mind. Perhaps you might notice a feeling of safety, a sense that you are protected, that something is standing guard while you rest. Because something is. Your brain is already preparing the shield. Natatu is where your brain begins to consolidate the day's memories, quietly filing them away. Memory consolidation is one of the most extraordinary functions of sleep. During the day, your hippocampus, the brain's temporary memory storage, fills up with new experiences, new information, new sensations. But the hippocampus has limited capacity. It needs to transfer its contents to the neocortex, the brain's long-term storage, for permanent keeping. This transfer happens primarily during non-2A and slow-wave sleep. Sleep spindles play a crucial role. They create windows of neural plasticity during which memories can be replayed, strengthened, and integrated into existing knowledge. Suzanne Diekelman and Jan Born at the University of Tübingen have shown that memories rehearsed during sleep are more stable, more accurate, and more accessible than memories that are simply left alone. So tonight, while you sleep, your brain will be quietly reviewing the day. The important things will be filed away. The trivial things will be released. By morning, your memories will be cleaner, clearer, more organized. You do not need to worry about remembering anything right now. Your brain will take care of it. That is part of what sleep is for. Deeper still is N3, slow wave sleep, where the brain pulses in long, Deep rhythms. N3 is the deepest stage of sleep. It is the hardest to wake from, the most restorative, and the most physiologically distinct from wakefulness. During N3, the brain produces delta waves, slow, high-amplitude oscillations of about half a cycle to 4 cycles per second. These are the slowest brain waves, the deepest oscillations, the most profound neural rhythms your brain is capable of producing. Imagine the ocean during a deep swell, not the choppy surface waves of a windy day, but the long, slow undulations that come from far out at sea, rising and falling, each wave carrying enormous energy, but moving with a gentleness that belies its power. That is what your brain will look like tonight. In slow wave sleep, great, slow pulses of electrical activity, rolling through your cortex like swells across the sea. And within those swells, the deepest restoration of all. This is the most restorative stage, where growth hormone flows and tissues repair. Slow wave sleep is when your body does its most intensive maintenance. Growth hormone surges from the pituitary gland. Cellular repair accelerates. Protein synthesis increases. Damaged tissues are rebuilt. It is also when the immune system does its deepest work, producing and distributing the cytokines and immune cells that will defend you tomorrow. Athletes know this instinctively. Studies at Stanford University have shown that extending sleep, and thereby increasing slow-wave sleep, significantly improves reaction time, sprint speed, and shooting accuracy in basketball players. But you do not need to be an athlete to benefit. Every body needs restoration. Every cell needs repair. Every tissue needs time to rebuild. And tonight, slow-wave sleep will provide that time. Your body will use these deep, quiet hours to do the work that can only be done in stillness. Perhaps you might notice your body feeling ready for that work. Heavy, still, willing, like a workshop that has closed for the night. Not because the work is done, but because the most delicate work requires silence. During slow-wave sleep, your brain's glymphatic system activates, washing away the day's metabolic waste. This is one of the most extraordinary discoveries in modern neuroscience. In 2012, Maiken Nedergaard and her team at the University of Rochester discovered that the brain has its own waste clearance system, distinct from the lymphatic system that serves the rest of the body. They called it the glymphatic system, G4 glial cells, the support cells of the brain that make it possible. During slow-wave sleep, the spaces between your neurons expand by up to 60%. Cerebrospinal fluid flows through these widened channels, washing away metabolic waste products, including beta amyloid, a protein associated with Alzheimer's disease. This cleansing is almost entirely restricted to sleep. During wakefulness, the channels are narrow and waste accumulates. During sleep, they open wide, and the tide rushes in. It is like a gentle tide moving through the spaces between your neurons, carrying away what is no longer needed. Liang Hui She, in Nedergaard's 2013 science paper, provided the first direct evidence of this process. Using imaging techniques in mice, the team watched as cerebrospinal fluid flowed through the brain in pulsing waves, coordinated with the slow waves of deep sleep. The analogy is almost too perfect. A tide moving through your brain, carrying away the debris of the day, leaving the neural landscape clean, fresh, ready for tomorrow. This may be one of the most fundamental reasons we sleep at all. Not just for rest, not just for memory, but for cleansing, for renewal, for the removal of everything that has accumulated during the hours of wakefulness. And tonight, this tide will flow through your brain, gently, thoroughly, carrying away what you no longer need, making room for what comes next. Perhaps you might imagine that tide now. Soft, clear water, moving slowly through your mind, washing everything clean. This cleansing process may be one of the most important reasons we sleep at all. For a century, scientists debated why sleep exists. It seemed like such a vulnerability. Hours of unconsciousness, unable to eat, unable to watch for predators, unable to reproduce. From an evolutionary standpoint, sleep should have been selected against. And yet, every animal sleeps. The glymphatic hypothesis offers a compelling answer. Sleep exists, at least in part, because the brain needs to clean itself. And it can only do this effectively when neural activity is reduced, when the busy chatter of wakefulness gives way to the slow, deep rhythms of sleep. Alan Rechtschaffen, the legendary sleep researcher at the University of Chicago, once said, "If sleep does not serve an absolutely vital function, then it is the biggest mistake the evolutionary process ever made." The glymphatic system suggests that the function is not just vital, it is irreplaceable. Nothing else can do what sleep does. No drug, no meditation, no rest, only sleep. And sleep is here, waiting for you, ready to do its quiet, essential work. Every living creature sleeps. Even organisms without brains show rest states. The hydra, a tiny freshwater organism with no brain, no centralized nervous system, shows periodic rest states that meet the scientific criteria for sleep. Jellyfish, which diverged from our evolutionary lineage over 500 million years ago, show circadian rest patterns. The roundworm sea, elegans, with just 302 neurons, has a sleep-like state called lethargus that occurs during developmental transitions. Even some single-celled organisms show rest activity cycles that may represent the most ancient form of sleep. This universality tells us something profound. Sleep is not a luxury. It is not an invention of complex brains. It is a fundamental property of life itself, as fundamental as feeding, as fundamental as reproduction. You are participating in something tonight that is as old as life on this planet, something that every organism, in every ocean, on every continent, in every era, has shared. There is a deep belonging in that. A quiet kinship with every creature that has ever closed its eyes and drifted away. Sleep is older than consciousness itself. It has been part of life for hundreds of millions of years. Consciousness, the aware, reflective, self-knowing kind, is a relatively recent development in the history of life. Most estimates place its emergence somewhere in the last few 100 million years. And full human-like consciousness may be only a few million years old. But sleep is far older. Sleep predates consciousness. Sleep predates brains. Sleep may predate nervous systems entirely. This means that sleep was here first. Before you could think about sleeping, before you could worry about sleeping, Before you could try to sleep, sleep was already part of you. It is not something that was added to life later. It is woven into the very fabric of being alive. It is as original as breathing, as original as the first cell dividing in a warm, ancient sea. Perhaps there is comfort in knowing that you are not fighting against sleep or trying to summon it. You are simply returning to something that has been waiting for you since the beginning of life. You are part of that ancient rhythm. You always have been. Your sleep tonight is connected, through an unbroken chain of biology, to the very first rest state of the very first organism. Every generation that came before you slept. Every ancestor, every species in your lineage. The rhythm was passed down, mother to child, cell to cell, gene to gene, an inheritance older than language, older than culture, older than bones. And tonight, you are continuing that inheritance. You are adding one more night to the longest unbroken tradition on Earth. Perhaps you might notice a feeling of continuity, a sense that this is not just your sleep. It is everyone's. It is everything's. It is the sleep of the whole living world, expressed through you. Tonight, in this quiet room, you are not alone in this. You have never been alone in this. The earth turns, the light fades, and your body responds, as it has since the very first night. Somewhere, right now, the earth is turning. The line of shadow is sweeping across the surface, bringing darkness to one hemisphere while light returns to the other. It has been doing this for 4.5 billion years. And for as long as there have been living things on this planet, they have responded to that turning, opening when the light comes, resting when the light fades, sleeping when the earth says night. You are part of that response. Your body is answering the earth's oldest question: is it light? Or is it dark? And tonight, the answer is dark, safe, time to rest. Perhaps you might notice the turning itself, not literally. You cannot feel the earth rotating beneath you, but perhaps, in some deeper way, you can feel your body's response to it. The settling, the softening, the ancient, wordless understanding that night has come. Sleep is not a problem to solve. It is a rhythm to trust. This might be the most restful thought of all. In a world that turns everything into a problem, something to optimize, to hack, to improve. Sleep resists that framing. Sleep is not broken. It does not need fixing. It does not need an app or a supplement or a strategy. It needs only what it has always needed: darkness, quiet, safety, and trust. Trust that your body knows what to do. Trust that the adenosine has built. Trust that the clock has turned. Trust that the melatonin is flowing and the temperature is dropping and the muscles are softening and the brain waves are slowing. Trust that you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Daniel Buis, one of the world's leading sleep researchers at the University of Pittsburgh, often reminds his patients, sleep is not a performance. It is a state you allow. So perhaps you might allow it now. Not force it, not chase it, just allow it. And tonight, two rivers, the pressure of your hours and the turning of the clock, have met. We have traveled a long way together tonight, from adenosine to circadian rhythms, from the SCN to melatonin, from temperature drops to sleep spindles, from the surface of wakefulness to the deep. slow waves of restoration. And through it all, two rivers have been flowing. The first, Process S, the homeostatic drive, has been building since you woke this morning. The second, Process C, the circadian rhythm, has been turning since before you were born. And now they have met. Here, in this moment, in this quiet room, in this body that has been preparing all day for this exact convergence. The sleep researcher, Alexander Borberly, who first proposed the two-process model in 1982, described this convergence as the optimal window for sleep, the moment when everything aligns, when the pressure is highest and the clock says night. That window is open now, wide open, and you are standing at its edge. They are carrying you now. You do not need to swim, just float. This is the last fact, the 100th gentle truth about sleep pressure and your body clock. And it is the simplest of all. You do not need to try. You do not need to work at this. You do not need to be anything other than what you are, right now. In this moment, the rivers are here. They have merged, and the current is moving, slowly, gently, inevitably, towards sleep. You do not need to swim. You do not need to steer. You do not need to know where you are going. The current knows. It has always known. Just float. Let the water hold you. Let the darkness cradle you. Let the ancient rhythm rock you. Slowly, gently, toward the shore of sleep. You are almost there. Perhaps you are already there. Tonight, you have traveled along two rivers. One began this morning, when you first opened your eyes and adenosine started its quiet accumulation. Hour by hour, it built, molecule by molecule. It gathered, a patient, invisible tide, rising through your waking day. The other has been running since before you were born, a clock no bigger than a grain of rice, ticking faithfully in the dark cathedral of your brain, counting the light, counting the hours, knowing, with an ancient certainty, when night has come, and now they have met. They have merged into a single, still pool, and you are floating in it. You do not need to try to sleep. You do not need to worry about whether it will come. It is already here. It has been here for a while. Perhaps you might notice that your jaw has softened, that your shoulders have settled deeper into wherever they are resting, that your breath has found its own slow rhythm, without being asked. This moment is enough. This breath is enough. You are enough. So rest now. If you would like, let the tide carry you. Let the clock keep time, and may your dreams be gentle, unhurried, and kind. Good night, sleepy soul. Good night.